Okay. All right, so we have started recording the meeting. Thank you for those of you who are joining us online. I am going to ask us to do a round of introductions, and then we can kind of go through the agenda that we have for the day. I'll start us off. My name is Joy Roberts. I'm the Chief of Policy and Implementation on the BC STAT team, and I'll pass it to Janella.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Janella Osakwe, and I'm a policy analyst with Joy on the BC STAT team.
Good afternoon. I'm Sergeant Bobby Zalewski of Baltimore County Police Special Victims Unit.
Good afternoon. I'm Officer Cordon, Multicultural Liaison and Multicultural Domestic Violence Coordinator.
Juliana Valencia Banks, Chief of Immigrant Affairs.
Amanda Rodriguez, CEO of Turnaround.
Krista Trahan, Co-Director of Child Advocacy Center.
Helen Valiant, the admin.
Katie O'Malley, I'm the Executive Director of the Women's Law Center of Maryland.
Good afternoon. My name is Christopher Smith. I'm Sergeant assigned to the Office of the Chief for Baltimore County Police Department.
Wes Fisher, I'm a major in the Information Services Division with the Baltimore County Police Department.
Awesome. That's everybody in the room. I'm going to ask our attendees online if you would also introduce yourselves, and I'm going to ask Amanda to kick us off.
Good afternoon, all. Amanda Carr, Chief of Staff for Payune.
Amanda, if you want to pass it to someone.
No, I did not. Sorry.
Hi, I'm Amy. I'll just start. Hi, I'm Amy Bollinger-Smith. I'm filling in for Mark Mills-Paul with Baltimore County Department of Social Services.
I'll go next. I'm Alicia Bickoff. I'm the Deputy Director of HANA.
I'm Shelby Frank, the Executive Director of Family Crisis Center of Baltimore County.
Good afternoon, Scott Schellenberger, State's Attorney in Baltimore County. Can you all hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great, thanks.
Hi, this is Rebecca Allen. I'm with the Governor's Office of Crime Prevention and Policy on behalf of our Executive Director, Dorothy Lenig.
Hi, for everyone who just joined us online, we're just doing virtual introductions. So if you could come off mute and introduce yourself.
Good afternoon. My name is Yvette Hicks, and I'm from the Baltimore County Commission for Women.
Welcome. Thank you for being here.
And I'm Tyleisha Perkins. I'm just here as a public viewer.
Thank you for being here, Ms. Perkins. Okay, so I know the agenda says that we're going to do report outs first. I'm actually going to ask the police department if they could kind of jump in with their presentation. So the last time we discussed the protective order update, I believe it was April of last year. So this is kind of picking up on that conversation, and Major Wes Fisher and his team will take us through some of the process changes as well as updates and actual numbers for protective orders. So with that, I will pass it over to police.
All right, so probably around 2021 to 2022, the department took on a staffing study to look at the number of calls that we handle and to see kind of the resources that we put at different kind of calls for service. And we've always known that protective orders were something critical that we did, but looking at the scope and how many calls for service we handle each day, week, and month, a lot of those weren't just actually serving the orders. They were transporting the orders and relaying them around the county to the place where they had to actually be physically served. So what we did was we tried to find a better way that would give us a higher level of responsiveness, but also the same level of accountability to ensure each document was accounted for and given the attention that it needed. So the first meeting we had with the court was in December of 2023. I was in a different role then. We met with the clerk and the chief judge of the Towson District Court. And while Judge Wilson seemed like she was really interested in a potential electronic option, the clerk's office felt that it was not feasible at that time, even though there was a system that had come online, the Maryland Electronic Court Document System. They felt like it just wasn't a good solution. And they were really much, I think, kind of married to the thought of the current process. We had some additional meetings where we talked about some of the issues we were seeing. And some of those things were certain parts in the process, just by human nature, there was something we looked at as batching, where the clerk's office would wait till a session ended and they had 10 or 12 orders ready to go. They would then call the communication center. They'd have to wait on hold for as long as a half an hour, 45 minutes, depending on emergency calls, and then give a lot of detailed information to the 911 center, which also tied up 911 resources for an extended period of time. But then those calls would hold till an officer could be dispatched to the court to pick up 5, 10, 15 cases at a time. Officers then had to relay them around the county by hand and hand them off to an officer of the next precinct to then take it to where it had to be served. There were just a lot of inefficiencies and honestly a lot of places where, despite a good track record of accountability, there were just too many places we could have a point of failure. And that's what really led us to explore further using the process of MDEC. The administration and Ms. Rebecca Young did a great job of helping us and kind of bring all the partners together, including, I forget the judge's name, but he was actually on the committee that stood up MDEC and felt like it would be a really good viable option for us. And that's what really got the traction to be where we are today. Just looking at the scope, also go to the next slide, I apologize. This is kind of the scope for 2023, 24, and year-to-date 25 of the number of orders that we're handling. We actually handle more than that. Some are tied to the same call for service, so it's not all encompassing, but it kind of lets us break that down and kind of see trends. 2024, especially in Essex, saw like almost a 75, 80% increase in cases. So down a little bit for this year, year to date, but it still is a growing place where we are just seeing growth in these orders. And it I think even more motivated us to find a really good solution. Next slide, please. So this is the old system. The court had gone virtually electronic several years ago, but they were still printing out an order just to relay to the police. So we were taking a digital system, we were making it paper just to fit a process that already existed. So the clerk would print out the copy, they would call the 911 center. Like I mentioned, it was a pretty long process of having to wait when they were busy and a big tax on the 911 resources. Then that call would remain in queue for a police unit. And it was prioritized based on some other more, not important, but high priority calls for service. So an officer was dispatched, would relay those to the appropriate precinct, but sometimes that was around the entire county. And because it was an only paper system, they had to do that by hand. They were then logged in at the precinct and a copy was faxed to our records section where records would conduct checks on the respondent and then enter that into NCIC. Finally, after that, the precinct was actually given that copy to be able to attempt service. So again, a couple points throughout here, it was just human nature to batch these and hold on to them until you had a number where you could, okay, I can call, I can enter these orders all at one time. But it definitely slowed down the process. Next slide, please. So in talking to all the stakeholders, and that was mostly the district court was our largest stakeholder, the 911 center and our police department operations record section. We really looked into MDEC and saw it was a system that would work for our purposes. It was designed to do things like this. The way the new system works through some trial and error is when that order is issued by the court, they are able to assign the Baltimore County Police Department as a party to that case. And that order is immediately sent to our records section to an account that's monitored 24/7, 365. So we immediately know we have an order standing. So instead of waiting for all these orders to come in and then go to the communication center and then wait at the court till an officer picks them up, we are going straight to our central records. So it's almost immediately entered into NCIC, and then the background checks are done to see if that person has any caution codes in NCIC or they're a potential threat. Obviously, because of the order, there's an increased danger level there. But some have identified cautions in NCIC as maybe armed and dangerous or potentially wanted. That order then, as soon as those checks are made, it's immediately sent directly to that precinct for service via secure email. And just by travel time, we're cutting out a lot of time right then and there. We're also creating that email trail that we can audit to ensure accountability. That's one of the things that was really important to us. We wanted to change it and make the system more efficient, but that accountability and the ability to have some checks and balances was just important. So as soon as that comes into the precinct, that order is logged in at that precinct. That's the only time that the copy of the order is printed at the precinct, so the officer can give it to the respondent when they serve it. But another issue we had with the court was, I think we were trying to be compliant, but we were giving them orders twice. We were returning them by fax or by email and also hand carrying. So the court would get copies of orders we had served in so many different ways. It took a lot of resources for them to go through just to find out we already have this one. It was already returned to us through a different manner. So another key feature here is as soon as that order is served, the officer returns to the precinct and is able to upload that order in a scanned document to the case. That case immediately goes to the domestic violence clerk's office so they can update the case. And then one part of that is we still at the precinct, when it's served, update that in VineLink, which is the victim witness portal. That's public access. We will update the fact that it's served there. That's something we did before, but again, the key thing there is as soon as that order is served, it's being uploaded into the system, and in almost real time, it appears in that case as being served. We're not relying on being transported to court.
Sorry, are we just gonna get a copy of this? Get my staff.
We can.
That's great.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. So a couple of things, just growing pains along the way. Occasionally the court would by mistake send it to the wrong email box. We would send it to a precinct to that one officer maybe didn't understand the process as well. We actually added one person in central records just to follow up these orders. And it was a very low investment for us of just one additional staff member being redirected. But again, these would end up being 5, 10, 15 orders at a time. These are being addressed as they come in individually in real time when they come in. So that's really the biggest benefit we've seen. We think a couple things. Number one, it's shown to improve our time to service. Some of these cases, we're able to serve them before the person hears this order is out, which makes our attempts a little more efficient. But I think most important is just that, it's rush hour and relaying an order around the Beltway through the region. Logistically, it's just a challenge. We've cut out a lot of those potential delays and made the system overall more effective. This kind of just shows by our precincts. That may not mean a lot to everyone, but it kind of starts precinct 1 on the west side, all the way around the county clockwise to precinct 12 Dundalk on the east side. Precinct 6 does show the highest number. Looking at the next slide, we'll see that might just be related to the Baltimore County Detention Center, that we're serving a lot of orders there. We are getting cooperation for the detention center. We call up there and say we have an order. They're actually allowing us to go and walk us through the facility and serve multiple inmates at a time,
Is that
which
new?
helps us.
Sort of new?
It does
I know
seem to be.
that's seemed to be a problem.
Yes, ma'am. I do believe it is new because previously I had not seen that, but now I see an officer respond and I see 3 or 4 CC numbers in a row being drawn. So I think it is a positive step. I think that explains the large number in Towson, but they seem to be more central, right? Precinct 4 is Pikesville, Precinct 8 is Parkville. They're the next 2 highest. It's not related to courts, really, because 11 and 2 also have courts, and those numbers aren't quite as high. But the blue are the service numbers, the service call for service, and the red are the actual completed services. Currently, we don't require an officer to draw a number for every attempt of service. We're looking at changing that for a couple reasons. One is just documenting the BWC and for our records keeping of how many attempts are actually being made. I just think it lets us have better data. Next slide, please.
Can I ask a question about that?
Sure.
So ideally, we would have blue being, taking up all those tiers here, right? And so I guess.
No, what was the attempts? So we have more services than attempts.
More services than attempts. I'm sorry. Okay.
Is there a way that you can, so where it says 100% up top, can you kind of close that? So as much as I want to see everyone online, I think for the people in the room, it makes the numbers a little bit bigger. So the 100% right above the, or right below where Yvette Hicks boxes.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so if you could, and then the 2 dashes right above it that you see, if you could collapse that and bring it up. Yep, there we go. Thank you.
Okay, that's better, but I can still see, so, I mean, one of the things obviously that's concerning to, I think, all of us is the making sure that people are served, and we've been hearing that, you know, it's been taking a really long time. So I guess, yes, this is better than I thought, to be honest, but it's still a long way to go to make sure that service is completed. So I guess the question is, what is the department doing to up that number?
So one of the things that we're starting to see are, and this is a kind of a command by command thing, they're dedicating officers to just serve these orders. So instead of, okay, I have 2 on my post that day, but I'm also responsible for the calls for service, they're dedicating one particular officer to serve them all. And that's their focus for that tour of duty, is to make sure they make as many attempts and services as possible.
Okay. And that's a new policy change.
It's something we're starting to see more and more, yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
So, Major, I was at the bench bar meeting a couple of months ago when Judge Wilson announced that MDEC, the officers were going to be trained on MDEC and start to do this. Can you tell us when this actually went live?
So I want to say October 15th was our date. We tried to do October 1st. There was a little logistical issue.
So it's pretty new.
It is pretty new.
Okay. So
Last check, about 1,500 orders have come through the system.
that's amazing.
And out of that, we may have had 3 errors that we had to check through our accountability process. But and they were very early on and easily attributed to just bringing some personnel who were off a birthday or week.
How many officers were trained on MDEC to get these in real time? Were all of them, or is everybody trained to do this, or is it a set group?
So good question. A lot of it is our desk officers of the precinct. They're the ones who are responsible for receiving that order and also uploading it. So they're the ones who had most of the training. We do have in our records section, though, some people who have a higher level of access to MDEC. And particularly one sergeant has been awesome in working with both the courts and the MDEC administrators to learn the nuances of the system. So they're kind of our subject matter expert. And they have made some changes in the system at our request. So it's worked very well. But so we almost had to make it so we can't hurt anything, right? We're able to upload these cases without having any disparate impact on the case or any issues if we, made a mistake. We're strictly uploading this, it goes to the TV clerks to approve it, and it shows up in the system.
And they're sending the service electronically also?
They are. Yep.
Major Fisher, so obviously the most important thing for the first few months was just making sure that people were following process and policy, like as it has been dictated to them. You mentioned that you all are also looking into capturing numbers, so you can see, well, we tried to serve this order 3 times. In addition to that, is it possible that you all could also include the reason for why it could not be served? And I know that you, better than anyone, can speak to reasons why, right? Like someone wasn't home, or we believe they may have fled this jurisdiction. But if we're able to see this on a more regular basis, and now that you're going to get better data and have a better system, in addition to how often are these things served, it would be helpful to be able to conclude it can't be served because, hey, we're getting bad addresses. Or there are other barriers that maybe we can begin to kind of discuss.
Technology, I think, is one for us. We still have certain places we rely on paper logs.
Yeah.
They're great for accountability. That's where we look in black and white and see this order was signed in and not signed out. And here's the expiration date, it has to be sent back to court. So for that reason, it works very well. It's very resilient. It doesn't fail. It doesn't crash. Someone can't go in, hit a wrong button, and erase data. But I do think it's time for us to look at electronic logs for these orders at the precinct level. That's something we are exploring. But again, it's just that accountability is so important to make sure it doesn't get messed up. We have in black and white where the shipping manager can audit that at a moment's notice and see where the order is and when it gets sent back. And pardon me. So that's internally one of the things we're looking at. We do think there's a lot of benefits to it, but it's just that crutch of we go on electronic with everything else. That's like our last hard copy that we can really use to ensure that accountability. But my personal opinion, it is time for us to look at that. And I think it's something we're going to do in short order. We haven't asked for an audit of those books, but it's a hand audit. It's time. So, but that's something on the horizon that I would like to do just to see before we send an order back, how many attempts and where they conducted. And is it that person who just knows this is coming and is trying to avoid us? Or they're not enough attempts for our liking or for, us to be comfortable that we tried everything.
Are other jurisdictions using MDEC? I mean, I know for a couple of years, the police have been trying to get the courts to use MDEC for service. Is there other jurisdictions that are doing it? I know Baltimore City uses the sheriffs.
They do. That's one thing we ran into, is we're unique in that most agencies, police departments aren't doing this job, right? A lot of it is sheriff's office. We had a lot of help. We spoke to the Baltimore County State Attorney's Office, the Sheriff's Office. They all were part in this project. All were on board from the start. But we are unique in that regard. I do think a lot of them are still using paper in many cases. I couldn't find anyone who said we use MDEC solely and this is how we do it. And from the court, it kind of seemed like it was new. It seemed like for them on their end, there was a case that they could look at and say, no, we do it this way on the Eastern Shore or out Western Maryland. We didn't come across that.
So you're the only ones.
As far as I know, yes.
Deserve an applause. Thank you. Thank you very much.
To the next slide here, and I think this speaks to the conversation about BCDC.
So just to show the increasing number of cases we are serving at the detention center. Anecdotally, I feel like when someone's incarcerated, often the petitioner will know that. And if they don't, if they were incarcerated somewhere else, we're knocking on the door regularly trying to serve a person. It seems like even their family's kind of in a position where they're not trying to hide, like they know where they are. They usually tell us that. We do also have VineLink. We started checking that when we get an order at the precinct level, just to see if that person's incarcerated. It does a pretty good job of giving us a thumbnail view of that person is incarcerated somewhere in Maryland. There are some that fall through the cracks and it's not always updated, but generally it's not updated on the release on the back end. On the front end, that person is in custody. You would usually see that there. And then we can arrange for service with either another jurisdiction or agency if appropriate. And we do that, right? We get orders from other jurisdictions. They get orders from our jurisdiction to serve the address of record. But there is certainly an increase, an upward trend of services at the detention center. And I think that cooperation is part of it, that it's just something that when we find someone there, they've been very accommodating to serve as quickly as possible.
Okay. That is the end of that presentation. Are there any other questions regarding protective orders for the police department?
Would it be possible for us to get that PowerPoint?
Yes. We can post it with the final notes of the meeting on the webpage where all the other meetings are.
And I can send them out to everybody if they want to also.
Do we track those numbers by language usage
The numbers of,
of protective orders that are served to people that are requested by people with limited English proficiency?
We probably have a better chance of doing that through the lethality assessments than the orders.
because all the orders are also English, correct? Which we will love to talk about a little bit more later in this meeting. But Juliana, that's a great question. I see Rebecca, your hand is up. Go ahead.
Yes. Are you guys tracking any information on firearms being collected related to final protective orders?
It's something we could get out of our data because we are on protective order services, writing reports, and it would indicate firearms. So it isn't something we have looked at, but we should be able to. I don't see why we can't. But that's
Okay,
something we-
thank you.
Any other questions from our online? Great. Thank you, Police Department, for being here and for sharing that information. I know that there's a couple other things that we're actually going to dig into as it relates to the annual report from the Police Department. So for those of you online, if you give us a moment, we're actually going to share the screen one more time and bring up the annual report. So thank you, Chanello. I do. Okay, so at the end of last year, the end of last year, there were the recommendations that you all worked with Henry to craft. And so I did want to review some of that. There were only 3 of them, one of which was accomplished, and I do believe that the webpage has been shown to the group. In review of the document, the other 2, which were related to housing as well as language access and cultural competency, are very critical to the work that everyone is doing. Oh, Rebecca, you have another question? Go ahead and come off mute.
No, I think my hand just isn't down. Sorry.
Okay, no worries. They seem to be very high level. And so as we are closing out the year, I wanted to have hopefully a robust conversation with everyone in the room and online about where we take those other 2 recommendations as I begin to plan for next year. So first recommendation does have to do with housing. I know that Department of Housing and Community Development is continuing to work on housing deals, and that's obviously not a quick solution, but it is one that they are dedicated to. I'm also aware that many of you, whether you're in the room or you're online, are receiving funds from DHCD or DSS for sheltering or rapid rehousing, and so are very well versed in this topic. For those of you who, whether you're well versed or not, but have questions on the sheltering side of things and want to dig into that a little bit deeper, what I would like to hear is what information, presentation, or anything would you benefit from discussing on the shelter side of that recommendation?
Mr. Schellenberg has a question.
Oh, please go ahead and come off mute if you have questions.
Great. So I don't have a question, but I have some information.
Okay.
We are allowed to use what's called asset forfeiture money to relocate folks. So if there's a companion criminal case and you're having trouble finding shelter, we can rely on some asset forfeiture money that we can relocate victims, particularly in domestic violence cases. So that's another resource in case others have problems, finding resources for some of these folks.
Thank you. Now, I'm sure that some of you in the room, like I said, are much more familiar than I am. Is there a way that we can go about getting access to that? Like, what is the process for that?
Well, they would contact our domestic violence unit. The police department knows how to do that. And then one of my deputies makes the decision about, how much we can spend and where they can go. We've actually moved people out of state in some very safety concerned cases. But typically we move them within the area, or, help pay for the moving for them to go live with a relative somewhere else. But our domestic violence unit can handle that.
Is that information that you'd be willing to share at a work group to kind of get numbers of how many people, specifically from the county, have been able to utilize that service?
Yeah, I can try. I know one of the topics we're going to have today is data, and that is very difficult for me. It's been a problem for a while, collecting a certain amount of data, but certainly I can take a look at that and see if we can track some of that down.
Okay, that would be great. And also the data side of BC Stat would be happy to sit down with you and kind of understand the basics of what you have available to you and see if there's a way that we can make that a little bit easier.
Yeah, I mean, the problem is, and I've explained this to others in other areas, is if somebody's charged with a first-degree assault and the person pleads guilty to second-degree assault, is that a win? Or is that, how do you quantify those things? Because somebody would look at it and say, well, you didn't accomplish what you needed to. And it's like, well, yeah, we did. So it's very case specific. But if anybody ever had any ideas about, I would consider that a win. They get convicted of something. But if it's not count one, then people don't always consider it a win.
Yes.
So what we're seeing in the county, and we're actually also experiencing very similar things in the city, there's a significant increase in need for emergency shelter, and then there are very few places for people to go afterwards. And I think that is both because there are limited shelter beds, period. I think Family Crisis Center is they do an incredible job, and they're also one resource in the county. And they're on one side of the county, so we also have people that want to keep their kids in the same school, and they simply don't have, there are no options to keep them on the side of the county where they want to be. The other problem is that have been now tons of, I think, news on how HUD is going to be running. There are going to be changes to HUD. And so I think there's going to be less access for folks than we previously had. We're even hearing, I think from some county meetings, that there's a good chance that it's going to be cut from 3 million to 1 million. And potentially that could impact domestic violence providers like Family Crisis Center and Turnaround in terms of our ability to serve. And so I think one is a funding issue fundamentally. Turnaround only does emergency shelter and hotels. So we need to have a next place for folks. We are happy to figure out what that resource looks like, but it would have to be funded. Like we have to have capital dollars, we have to have a location, we have to have programmatic dollars. So it is a huge problem. I think it is one of the largest problems in the domestic violence field right now is what we do with people. But we've had, times where we've had people in shelter for 90 days in a hotel trying to figure out what's next for their life because there's just nothing else afterwards for them.
Okay. We'll definitely ask DHCD to come to another meeting at the top of the year and kind of talk through what it is that they're seeing on that federal side.
And if I can piggyback on what Amanda was saying, we function our sheltering similarly as well, and we're so grateful for Family Crisis Center's partnership in this. But it's not just about putting a roof over someone's head, although that's a critical component to their safety. It's if that sheltering is safe for them. If you have something where it's a really dramatic or complicated stalking case, having someone in a hotel where any member of the public can walk in isn't a safe option. And when we have these people in hotels for extended periods of time, we've seen a lot of decompensation as well, just because, think about it. You can't make a meal. You can't have any, if you're there with your children, you can't have any space to yourself. If your children are trying to do their homework, the whole room has to be quiet so that they can focus on their homework. Like, it's just not an ideal setting. It works for crisis, and it is certainly a roof over somebody's head. But I just think it's important that we highlight that housing is not, a bed does not equal a bed does not equal a bed. It has to be the right thing. It has to be the right fit from a safety perspective and from a mental health perspective.
Thank you, Alicia. Rebecca, I do see your hand up if you'd like to come off mute.
Thank you. I have two things. Scott, really quick, were you referring to the MSA relocation funding?
So that there are two things. The MSAA, that's the Maryland States Attorneys Association, has some funding. But then as an individual state's attorney's office, we also have what's called asset forfeiture money that we can use for some of this. What happens was if somebody gets arrested for selling drugs and they have a lot of money, the judge can order that that the money be turned over to the state. The police department gets a good deal of it. We get a little bit of it. And we have access to that money. So it's two different pools that can be used.
Okay, thank you. And then I just also wanted to add, it's not a huge support with housing and shelter, but the Criminal Injuries Compensation Board, as of July 1st, can now assist with, it's called relocation, a one-time relocation assistance, but it is now essentially, they can assist with moving expenses and a security deposit. So they're not as hands-on as maybe the state's attorney's office or a service provider with locating housing. But if the individual knows where they want to move, or they already know who they want to utilize for moving services, CICB can pay for either moving expenses or relocation, security deposit. So that's effective July 1st of this year. And just wanted to share that. I don't know if we've done any relocations yet, but if you guys also would want a presentation on the new changes to the Criminal Injuries Compensation Board that went into effect in July, I'd also be happy to do that for you guys.
I see some head nods in the room, so I'm going to say yes, and we'll get in touch with you on scheduling that for next year. So thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, so still within recommendation 1, there's something that was at the end of the paragraph as it related to employment services and economic opportunities for survivors. Baltimore County has a very robust Department of Economic Workforce Development that has training opportunities as well as great connections with CCBC. Within the agendas that I was looking at, I did not see that they were one of your visitors who may have provided a presentation. Their chief of workforce development is amazing. I know that I've connected her with at least one of the nonprofit organizations, and so would be happy to bring her into the room to see what DUDE does. That's what we call them, DUDE. What DUDE does, we love acronyms, as well as what potential, whether it's partnership, whether it's events that they are having that you all want to direct some of your clients to, would be happy to do that if there's interest from the group.
Definitely. A lot of our clients, Maryland Network Against Domestic Violence has a SEED program where they do empower survivors to become economically stable, because so many of them have been financial fraud many times. Their credit's been ruined. They need all kinds of different services, getting a banking account and all of that. So that would be huge.
Okay. So we will also add them on the list. And like I said, Tracy is amazing.
Rebecca, did you still have your hand up from your last comment, or?
Okay.
Yes, sorry.
Okay.
I'm used to Google. I'm used to Google, and it puts it down automatically.
Got it. So we're going to move on to recommendation 2, which was law enforcement providers in Baltimore County government should increase their support of multilingual and cultural competency efforts to serve Baltimore County's diverse communities. Since we do still have the police department here, and Major Fish and I have had some conversations, I'm going to pass it back to them for them to kind of talk us through that process for them internally.
From a broad perspective, I think our increased focus on hiring for diversity certainly does help to some extent. We had an Academy Fest graduation last night. There are a couple of multilingual recruits that graduated there. That continues to be a focus. We also have a program where we are now giving financial compensation to officers who speak another language. It's a good program. There are some challenges, I think, that the certification, even for a native speaker, may not reach the level that they pass the test to get that compensation. That's something that we're working through. But again, it's another potential avenue for us to encourage multilingual officers. Baltimore County government in general offers free online language training. So they continue to put out information sessions about that. So encouraging officers to attend those sessions, get that free training that then hopefully will allow them to get that additional compensation has been huge. But for me, technology is somewhere I see the potential for a lot of growth in access. And also, if you could just speak to the application.
Yeah, so the county has like an app that officers now can use, which they can have either via audio or FaceTime. So if you try to serve, let's say, Protect the Border, you call the language line whatever language that Protect the Border needs to be translated, and they'll do a very, very good job translating that for that victim. So whether it's for like Protect the Borders or just witness statements, interviews. We have that access now that it's like approximately like 20, 25 languages that we have.
That's great.
So yeah.
And again, the benefit isn't just someone who's doing it over a voice call. It's actually, you can see the person, interact with them, speak. It works with American Sign Language, I believe you said.
Right.
So those are all, technology, I think, is a huge force multiplier for us in some of these areas. Even our body worn cameras can allow an officer now with some new features that isn't on scene to see what's happening and translate for an officer who is what's seen. So there are some increased features of technology. So the app was Insight, I
It's
think you
called
said.
Insight. Yeah.
But in terms of us for our body worn cameras too.
Is that through Language Line or is that something the police department has?
The police department has it through IT, then they got to just put on a code through a COM portal. They have to download it.
Did they use it on their phone or did they use
It's
it?
on the phone. It's on the
No.
phone.
Police department should discuss that with the language access coordinator for the county to ensure that one, data protection is happening, that there's also metrics that you're able to track and that it's not double dipping into the contract. So the county has a contract with Language Line Solutions to use interpretation and translation services. They also have an app, I don't know if that's the name of the Language Line Solutions app, but the department should not be paying for a second service when we have a contract for.
I know we're not an
the service
agency, so we will find out where that funding source is. I do believe it is from language. Access.
It might be Language Line, and it's just the name of the app. The other thing, are we tracking how we're training officers on using it? It is, okay. Take back my question, it is through Language Line Solutions. So the vendor is Language Line Solutions, and the county has a state contract. So they reduce the rates for public safety on what they charge. And there's a language line rate for state nonprofits to use Language Line Solutions. And if anybody has questions on that, I can find the information and connect you all. Are we tracking how we're training officers on using the app? And are there accountability measures when officers don't use the app? Like how can community members file a complaint when officers are refusing to either get an interpreter or use the app?
That's just our normal internal affairs process. That would be something like an officer failure to conduct an investigation properly or something like that. That would be through our normal complaint process. In terms of usage, I'm sure we can get that information.
We have it. So language.
Yeah, so we would know. Yeah, so that's why we have to have that code because it attributes it to our agency. Yes.
How many physical officers do you have? So you said that you all also have the program where officers, if they're speaking a different language, there is some type of financial compensation. Do you happen to know how many languages we have within just like within our force? How many languages can our officers speak?
I don't know off the top of my head.
I wouldn't either, but if I had to estimate, we have probably about 10 different languages in the county.
Okay.
One thing with that program, it was put in our contract maybe 3 years ago. There's been some issues with the vendor getting test up and running.
Okay.
So we've just really started testing in the last year, probably, I would say. So it is very new.
And not that I'm knocking Insight, but this is a great conversation. Having to rely on my phone. If that's all I can do, then that's great because this is better than nothing. But just wondering how many do we actually have in the force and what those languages are.
And for us, that technology is good for that initial on scene, right? Where's the person now? Are you safe? Do they have a weapon? Like those public safety questions,
Yeah.
really we focus that on. When we have that much more intimate, critical investigative interview, we almost always have the ability.
Okay.
100%.
Have you all been able to, and I heard you say that we're just starting, so it's fine if we haven't, but like, have you all been able to kind of look at, well, these are the languages that we speak the most often when we are responding, and then informing officers and saying, hey, pick whatever language, because if it's the Rosetta, okay, so it's the county program that we have that allows us to use the software or the program for free, but is there any, hey, police department, these are the top languages that we are seeing when we're out in the field. Take whatever language you want. We really, really like if you would take these ones. Just a.
There are some,
just a-
yeah, you will get requests. So I think they're probably the ones that best tell us
Okay.
where the gaps are. That's also something to look at
Okay.
moving forward.
So we have a report with the public safety. So the way the vendor works is unfortunately it lumped fire and police into one account. So we can't differentiate between fire and police on the data that spits out. But we have like a language summary by
Okay.
monthly bill.
Okay.
And the top language, to nobody's surprise, is Spanish, followed by Russian, Arabic, Mandarin, and Bali.
Question, within Spanish, this is based off of what I think I know, so like, if I'm speaking to someone who is Mexican, that dialect might be different from someone who's Colombian.
It's not gonna track, yeah.
Okay.
It's not gonna track it, and language line will certify for general North American Spanish, so it's not specifically looking for like the Colombian or like the Honduran, and it's just the words that we use are different. Like I call kids niños, you Central Americans will call them cipotes, and I know what a cipote is because I've lived here for 17 years, but somebody from like the Midwest that grew up speaking Spanish, because their family's Chilean, will be like, what the heck is a cipote?
Okay.
I'd love to see us, the police department, track how often a multilingual officer is doing the follow-up to the initial contact. So like when Chris goes out to do the more extensive report, like are we tracking that in a way that's measurable? Because then we can start seeing the story of this is how often these like 10 officers are getting pulled to go do this kind of work.
You don't have to raise your.
I'm sorry. I'm here. I'm very accustomed to raising my hand. So from the victim service side, since the Trump administration, especially with the amount of public information around deportations that's been out there, we were seeing actually, we had 100% increase in Spanish speaking individuals who are coming in for services. And since January, that number, the new enrollee number has dwindled to, and we get like one a month now from somewhere like 16 or 17 a month. And I know that the county has removed its sanctuary status. We have clients that are just refusing to leave their homes. So is there, I think around serving this population, again, we want to be a resource, but I do think that we're going to need some support from the county in figuring out what that messaging is because people don't feel safe to leave.
Yeah.
So I don't even know from a practical standpoint what losing sanctuary status means for how we are treating immigrant populations, especially those that don't speak English.
So we put out,
Sorry, there's some, go ahead.
We just had a resource fair. I went to the White House office. We just had a resource fair, and it was Owens Mills, and that's near Owens Mills High School. We have a very big immigrant community, especially those different nationalities. And one of the things that we saw was that usually that resource fair, there was people in there a lot, and I spoke to one lady who was Guatemalan. And I asked her, hey, is there anyone else that we might be able to help? And, she was like, oh, there's not many people that want to come out.
Yeah.
They feel, it's literally like, they feel like that they can be targeted very, very easily. And it's funny, you said people don't want to leave their homes. And this was just at the end of October that we had this, probably like the 27th of October. And we noticed usually you'll have a good amount of people come out and just people are just not looking to do it. So, yeah, that's a pretty big deal. But I know that we had a meeting it was after the memo came out about the whole sanctuary status, whatever, and what is the interim,
Happy.
yeah, Klausmeier, and they went over what it meant.
Mm-hmm.
Was anyone else on? Everyone else? Yeah, so you remember, yeah, we had a lot of questions. We got a lot of questions.
Did you get any answers?
Well, yes, they were. So apparently this has been the like what they do, what they've been doing for a while, but it was made like more, I guess, they were just reiterating it. Is that what you got, Senator?
I don't want to characterize how the county characterized it. I feel like there are county officials who can do that better than I can. But we
Yeah.
were told that practically there were no changes.
Yeah.
And there were a variety of reasons why they felt like they needed to do this.
And it was just, it was brought up that there was a individual who had been, I believe, they had been involved in, was it like a sexual assault or something like that on a minor, something like that? And that was why, apparently they brought it up. That's why, I mean, I can go back in my notes, I can give it to you after, but yeah, that's what was said.
So the rationale is that there was one bad actor, so they wanted to.
Well,
Yeah.
it's more complicated. I mean, there were a lot of, it sounds like, mistakes on the part of ICE.
Yes.
They didn't have the right contact information for the detention center. I mean, the police folks here could probably tell them better than I can, but you know, that's how it was articulated to us. And they were frustrated that they did not get a response for the county. So they threatened to withhold federal funds from the county across the board unless they went into discussions with them and et cetera.
So just a very quick history of the program. After 9/11, when INS was dismantled, when they created DHS, around 2006, the Fed started a program called Secure Communities, where federal agents would send immigration detainers for detainees that were undocumented, and typically detainees with like high-profile violent convictions would be removed. Some people would be let go, and it's 2 decades of this happening. Baltimore County was just one of the last counties in the state, if not the last county in the state, to sign an agreement saying when an undocumented detainee is going to be released and they have a detainer, this is what's going to happen. We put out a more extensive FAQ. It's 16, 17 questions. So we've translated it into 6 different languages. For those of you that are interested, on Thursday at 2 p.m., I run a monthly advisory group for immigrant serving organizations and community partners, community leaders, third Thursday of the month at 2 p.m. virtual. This Thursday, we will have our county attorney, James Benjamin, Director of Hetfield from Corrections, the Chief of Staff, and potentially Deputy CAO Rebecca Young on a call with the service providers to talk about the MOU, what it means, what it's changed, what it hasn't changed. If you all would like to be on that call, I'm happy to send an invitation to everybody. It's about 20 to 40 service providers, depending on the topic. I imagine Thursday it will be a full house. But they'll be able to talk about what has changed, what hasn't changed. And we are working on lining up some community listening sessions to talk to community members in their faith communities at a place where they feel safe and attend regularly, because to Amanda's point, people are going from work to school to church to the grocery store, and that's about it. Anything besides that is not happening. So we'll talk about it on Thursday, 2 p.m.
That's great. I think my concern is that, and it was the same that we experienced during COVID, the level of violence within the homes is exacerbated because of the stressors of what's happening, and then also people are isolated. We had both significant increases in domestic violence and child sexual abuse during that time that were reported to us. And so I do think that we collectively, especially if this is a recommendation that we're putting forward, we need to figure out as a county how we're going to respond to that if people are not, if they don't feel safe to come out of their homes.
Thank you. And I was just going to say, I'm pulling numbers for language line. Well, yeah, it's pulling language line numbers from 23, 24, 25, so that we can start seeing where the changes are happening, because there's the word Anecdotally. Thank you, ma'am. English is my second language. We are hearing, right? Like people are not calling, people are not going. The beauty of data is it tells you. So we'll look to see if there's discrepancies between 23, 24, and 25 numbers, and we can report that out for next meeting.
And Juliana, I saw a lot of you taking notes on the meeting. If you could also just send me the information and in the notes, we'll make sure that that goes out so that anyone online who wants to attend that meeting can reference the notes. Okay. Thank you for that. So I will say this plainly, objectively, with just facts. In the conversation that we have had about protective orders, it has come to everyone's, well, it's come to my awareness, you all knew, that the form is only in English, which is a barrier, to say the least. And so while that is not at the Baltimore County level, that's not something we can control. Would be curious to hear from your perspective if there have been any conversations about those forms being translated into other languages.
Is that true? I mean, that's from the judiciaries?
Yeah.
Across the state?
Across the state, yeah. I mean, I
I'm
think it's
shocked.
I can't imagine that it, in this day and age, could be that expensive, but it's been an issue that's been brought up.
Yeah.
So it would be something that Chief Judge Fader and Chief Judge Morrissey, along with the head of the AOC, is Judy Rupp. Now, I think she's the what do they call that? The director of the Administrative Office of Courts. Conversation, Judy Rupp.
Oh, no.
Took over for Pam White.
I'm saying no because Rebecca found the Spanish form. Rebecca, do you know if there are other languages that this is translated for?
I'm on a statewide domestic violence fatality review team, statewide implementation team with MNADV, and we've discussed this there too. So this was sent previously, and it looks like it was just revised last month. But as far as I know, it's only Spanish and English.
Did the courts pay for that, Rebecca?
I have no idea.
Yeah, but I think since it's a court form, it would
Probably.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've never seen one. I mean, the forms are complicated enough in English. So, I mean,
Correct.
having a survivor look at that in English, they're just kind of complicated when they're upset, but having it in Spanish would be fantastic.
Okay.
I also have heard from other jurisdictions that some clerks will not accept a non-English form, which is a problem.
So this is sort of interesting. I'm on, and I trust what Rebecca is saying around the statewide DVFRT team because they're probably spending a lot more time than me just clicking around for 2 seconds. But if I were just a member of the public going to the court's website and you go to court form search, there's filters for domestic violence and then there's filter for languages. And if you turn off the filter for the languages, there's a domestic violence form in Korean. It looks like there's one in French. Now, I don't know the accuracy of the translation, how much people know about these.
I do know they've recently updated their website with connection to Google Translate, where you can change the whole website, so that maybe change the individual ones as well. If I'm not seeing what you're seeing, but I do know that they have recently done that, and so it might be using Google Translate.
Interesting.
Rebecca, do you know if those forms are only available online or are they actually available when a person is in the courthouse?
Never seen them.
I don't know.
In Baltimore County, though, we are very fortunate. We have the Access to Justice Center in the courthouse, and it is staffed by multilingual folks that will help fill out forms and provide guidance. So shout out to them.
So I think some of this, so Juliana, I know I owe you lunch anyways, so love to sit down. because I think some of this may be much more discovery and kind of research. And we can continue to discuss it in the work group, but I think there's a bit more looking into this. Now this, thank you, Rebecca, yes. Okay, so so the last recommendation, actually, before I move there, does anyone have any other questions about the first two? I think we're good.
I don't have any questions. I will say I don't believe those forms are in the courthouse. Our bilingual advocates have to routinely go to be able to translate what those forms mean for individuals that they're going with.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so that being said, Alicia, go ahead.
Sorry, I just have one other thing to add. I mean, I think part of this is not only having the forms, because that is the first step to people being able to seek assistance, but it's also having those interpreters in the variety of languages in the courts once they file the petition for the temporary and the final protective order hearings. Because somebody can submit the paperwork and submit it in their language of origin, but then if they can't convey it to the judge, they're no further safe.
Well,
And I know that the clerks will call, but we've had a lot of clients who come and they're like, oh, well, we need to come back another day because an interpreter's not available.
So the courts will now have been using for at least the past 5 years, if not even before, language line. And so when a citizen comes in off the streets and they speak Russian, or they speak Arabic, or they speak any of the languages that you can imagine, not just Spanish speaking folks, but all kinds of different languages, you call the language line, and it's not necessarily an easy process for the judge, but the judge I've actually conducted entire hearings all with the language line without having a physical interpreter in the courtroom. Because that can sometimes happen when the courts will request an interpreter after the temporary and the interpreter doesn't show up for whatever reason, the language line is available for the final as well. But that's the judges are instructed and trained to use the language line whenever a citizen comes in and speaks another language. And it's takes a longer process, but it definitely works. And I know they still use that. So the best case scenario, though, is after the temporary is issued through the language line and the judge goes ahead and sets for a final, then the courts are responsible for ordering that interpreter to make sure that the interpreter is there. Or if the citizen has an attorney, then the attorney oftentimes will request it as well. But they've had that for a long time. And it can be frustrating if a judge doesn't use it, and that's when there's a process for complaining about that.
Thank you. Okay, so the last recommendation was the website that's been live and was demoed to everyone in the room. I can next time maybe poll and see if we can get hits on how many people have looked at it. We can typically do that with our other pages, but I need to talk to them first. So that is it for the recommendations. Now, looking forward to next year. I think that we've made a lot of, Alicia, your hand is still up. You have, okay, I just want to make sure. No worries.
You're on mute.
You're on mute.
Sorry, I'm in Becky's camp also. I'm not used to using WebEx. My bad.
No worries. So I think we have a lot of things that we want to discuss and kind of dig into next year. I do want to end the conversation or have one final conversation to reaffirm the goal of the work group, which is resource coordination to support victims of sexual exploitation, sexual violence, and domestic abuse. In some of the meetings, I know that there have been conversations about sexual violence. I think the majority of the conversations have been on domestic abuse, which we could talk about domestic abuse for a very long time. So I am not trying to punt that I'm not trying to punt that. I am trying to make sure that as you come to this work group, it is addressing all of those things. I am much more familiar with the domestic violence side of information. And so my final question to this work group is, within those other two buckets, what are some of the things that you would like for us to bring forth in this forum? Because as someone in this room has said, this is the forum for you all to say the quiet things out loud. And so want to provide that opportunity. So domestic violence and domestic abuse, I think that we've got plenty of things that we can continue to talk through. But as it relates to sexual exploitation and sexual violence, have you, I know you all have things that you want to talk about, so if you would please let me know.
It would be great to see the same level of data that we saw from police on domestic violence, on sexual violence, like where it's happening. And I think one of my, one of the things that has interested me is I know that I've seen data on like first and second degree, but third and fourth is not something that I've seen a lot of data on. And so that would be helpful. Because I don't know that those cases actually get recorded to the Rape Crisis Center. So we have a great relationship with SVU, but they're also generally not getting third and fourth degree sexual assault cases and trafficking. I mean, I haven't seen data on trafficking in a very long time, but clearly it's been very active because I've been on the news a lot in terms of juvenile trafficking in the county. So that would be great to see some information.
I just got 3 yesterday.
Yes, I know.
It's seniors. Oh, that's the
Yeah.
thing, senior traffic.
Oh.
I wanted to follow up on the data also from SVU. And I'm not sure how much you have heard about. So the Child Advocacy Center is accredited through the National Children's Alliance, but we also have oversight of the Maryland Children's Alliance, and they just put out statewide standards, and they're expecting us to do a lot more than the national standards. And one of them is to handle all children, whether it's an assault. So the Child Advocacy Center usually handles the care and custody situations of all children under 18, but SVU handles 13 and above when they're like, a stranger rape or something like that, something that's not care and custody related. MCA is asking that that all jurisdictions start to handle in the CAC, give us CAC response, meaning all the disciplines, including victim advocacy, respond to sexual assault cases of children as well. That would mean bringing the child to the CAC, giving them a forensic interview, a medical, the whole disciplinary team would be involved. At this point, we could not handle that. We've talked about that at the CAC board. And one of the things that I want to present to MCA, the Maryland Children's Alliance, is the data. How many kids are they actually seeing at SVU? So I could say, this is the amount of staff that we would need to increase. Or we probably, in my mind, it would be like tripled because there's other standards that they also want to increase. But if that's something that could be tracked in the future, that would be super helpful for us to see how many kids they're treating in SVU.
I have a question on that, if you all don't mind. And police department, feel free to say we can offline this. I don't know how much of this data is public versus protected. And so I want to keep that in mind in these conversations because one, yes, I think everybody in this room can say they appreciate the fact that the police department has been so transparent with the data. I also want to be mindful of the agreements that we have in place on what can and cannot be shared outside of this room. So that's my caveat to research to see what can be shared. And I know police is more than comfortable to speak on that, but want to keep that in mind. In this room, I think that we can be a bit more open. Just want to make sure that outside of this room, what are the controls in place for information?
Generally for us, anything involving juvenile cases has to go just through one additional layer of legal review, just because the rules governing juvenile information are so strict in Maryland. But we can certainly look at what's possible, what we can do.
But we're also talking, I mean, aggregate numbers and over a certain number, like,
Exactly.
if you have minute numbers, that's a whole different thing, but if.
Yeah, it's suppressed under a certain amount.
Yeah.
But I have a question in terms of that change in policy. So those things that were under SVU's purview now would come under CACs. So how you articulate the 13 and
Yeah.
over. So
That is
what's
one
the
way-
rationale behind that? Do you know?
That they think every child should receive a CAC response, which in the
Okay.
ideal world, I
So
agree with
that's
them, but
much
it,
more comprehensive.
you know, when we've talked, even the chief of police says, at this point, we couldn't make that change. We would need an entirely, we would need a new CAC, basically. We need a bigger space.
So the reason I was late is 'cause I was coming from Center for Hope.
The 75,000 square foot facility.
Right, so who did tell me that they do some work with the county and they do see. So anyway, I would love to, continue that conversation.
And does GDMC partner with you too?
Yeah.
So you get their forensic unit, the safe unit?
Yes.
So, but even with all those resources, with what the center was saying, it's still insurmountable?
Yeah, I only have 3.5 victim advocates right now to support all of the, I mean, we do close to 1,000 interviews a year. And every single person that walks through the door is supposed to get a victim advocate response. And it's just, it's unfeasible. They're running ragged. And like this, the situation you were just talking about, I was texting with them about, they have to translate every single protective order. We have 2 Spanish-speaking ones, victim advocates, but they have to translate every document on a paper form for a protective order for the clients that need it. And that's probably
time.
Yeah, that's a lot of time and effort. If the client could just go in and type it online themselves, it would be so much easier and faster.
I do see a hand up online, and I love this. This is great. We're having great conversations in the room. Want to make sure that our online parties can also have great conversations. So please go ahead and come off mute.
So it's Scott. I can tell you that I can back up the idea that switching all the young people to the CAC would be a huge lift, a very huge lift. And to show you how complicated it is, we had an arrest just this week. A young 16-year-old was being sexually trafficked around, and was mainly at the Comfort Inn on Joppa Road, right down the street. There are 2 defendants. One is currently in custody in Maryland, and one is going to be extradited from another state. But that case was initially being investigated by the Maryland State Police. And then they brought in the Baltimore County Police after a lot of things had already been done. So it's a very complicated over jurisdictions and things like that would take a while to try and decipher and figure out.
Thank you. Okay, so bringing us back to question at hand. I got some topics from the end of the table. Thank you. Anything else?
Go ahead, Sandra.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
So this is for next year?
For next year.
So I know that the county used to have a lethality review board that was run through Dove. I learned that, I've been back in the county now since 2024. And I think during COVID, or maybe shortly thereafter, the Dove person who coordinated that no longer could do it. And right now there's no lethality review board. And I know just in Baltimore County, last month, I think there were 5 domestic homicides, right, Scott? I mean, there's been an increase and we don't have that. I was wondering if this committee or if there was another committee like the Baltimore County Criminal Justice Coordinating, is there such a thing?
I don't know. I mean,
the city has one for Timberango.
I can tell you every year, nearly half of our homicides are domestic related in some fashion. Nearly half every year. And as you pointed out, during COVID, our homicide numbers went way up. 2020 and 2021, they went way up and have been dropping down since.
So what happened to the board? Is there some way, Shelby's got her hand up.
I'm actually working right now with MNADV to actually bring this fatality review team back together. That person stepped down and left so once that person left, nobody stood up to take on the role.
Yeah, so I was actually the co-chair with her. And then I stepped down and her name is Audrey Berger, and she now is with a different entity, and she was the chair for many, many, many years. And what really happened was nobody wanted to fill the position.
Well, I'd be happy to help, Shelby, if you want to reach out.
I'll absolutely do that.
That was one of my questions about that. The other is, I don't want to get lost here, all the work that we have done on rape kits and the sexual assault, evidence and kind of it would be helpful to have regular updates on that to this group, I think.
BBMC slide.
Yes,
Okay.
and look, and I'm on a statewide group that does have some participation from the county, but I'll just say it's lagged a little bit recently, so I think that would be helpful to have this group involved in that too.
I believe, I'm 99% sure, the GBMC slide, because the BC Stat team helped create that page and dashboard, so that should be an easy. I don't think it would take very long for us to do a presentation. Now, getting the other partners in the room, will take some coordination, but we can show.
That would be great, like how many of those have been tested, kind of where they are, and whether there have been follow-up prosecutions or law enforcement involvement.
So actually, I can provide that information.
Great.
All the slides have been transferred to from GBMC to the evidence unit. All the slides have gone to Bodie. That's who we paid as our contractor to do the testing.
Yep.
All the slides are back from Bodie. Of the slides that have come back, 1,107 were not CODIS eligible. 143 profiles have already been entered into CODIS, and they are, well, as of September, I haven't gotten an update since then. They were still reviewing 130 cases left to review that are negative but had some limited results and whether they could go into CODIS or not. There were a number of cases where the person had already been tried and either found guilty or not guilty. Obviously, if they were guilty, we couldn't use the CODIS, but also if they're not guilty, double jeopardy would prevent us from charging them again. But I can get these numbers updated and provide that to you all.
That would be helpful, and I'll also try to find the link for the public dashboard.
Right.
And include that.
But there are many that need further investigation, and I know I don't know if that's happening at a local level, in addition to the folks out of the AG's office that are doing the follow-up investigating. So I think that would be helpful.
It's mainly us.
Scott, in terms of the ones that you're saying were found not guilty, but there was a CODIS hit, has there been a notification to the victims in those cases? Because we haven't notified victims since April.
Yeah, let me double check on that, because you are correct. The victim should know that there was a hit, and unfortunately we can't do anything about it, but you know, the hit verifies their story even if the court didn't. So let me check on that.
Okay, thank you.
Alicia, I see your hand up.
Sorry, that was from before.
Right, okay.
I'll get it, I promise.
Okay. So I think that we have plenty on our agenda for the next year. And honestly, thank you all so much for providing this. This is your space. And so want to make sure that I am the facilitator of this conversation. And so it is helpful to know what you would like to discuss. I do want to leave you with one last thing. So drastically changing lines really quick. So we all know food insecurity is not a new conversation. It has been a very popular conversation over the past several months after everything that's been happening at the federal level. This is our food pantry locator. This has actually been up since 2023. It is not new, but want to provide this as a resource because of the clients that we have and people that we just come in contact with through our work. This isn't up to date. It was actually updated yesterday. What we do, or what we have the ability to do, can I just put it real quick? Is let's say I want to understand where are the food pantries in my area. I'm just going to use the historic courthouse. And so it gives me, yep, this is the one. It shows me all of the food pantries within my area, and in a moment what will actually happen is it should actually populate over here. Can we?
Computer's very slow.
Chanel's computer is doing a lot of work right now. Okay, there we go. Okay, so these are all of the food pantries within that 5 mile radius. And if I go to Rock City Church, it will also tell me what the hours are and how to get access to it. So this is a tool that the BC Stat team has created and that we work with our Department of Public Development to make sure it's updated. This is public. We will put it in the notes. We are hopeful that SNAP benefits would not be cut off. We're hopeful that people will be able to get the food that they need. This is a resource. All of this is up to date. So I'll send this out. You can use it. You can provide this to the people that you're working with. But wanted to make sure that as we go into the holiday season, you all know that this is here. And if maybe someone goes and unfortunately it's closed, this is an actual email. Essence Cropper is someone I used to work with. She is very responsive. And so then she will update it so that there is no more confusion. Because I know the question is going to come. It does translate, but only to Spanish right now. I don't know if we have looked into getting it translated into other languages, but like I said, this is actually a much older tool. It's just something that we continuously update.
It's amazing. How long have you had it?
I think it's 2023. Yeah. So wanted to make sure I shared this before we leave off and offer you all the opportunity to share any events or things that are coming up in your organizations that you would like to share with this table and with online. That will go in the notes or can be promoted. Shelby, I see your hands up. Go ahead.
So we're going into the holiday season. We have what we call our FCC Holiday Helpers, where we collect donations, whether gift card, monetary, to be able to assist the families that we serve in shelter and our housing programs. And I do have flyers and links to all of that as well that I can share.
Thank you, Shelby. If you could shoot me an email with that, we'll make sure there's gonna be a lot of okay, thank you. Alicia, I'm sorry. Shelby, thank you. If you could send that to me, we'll try to make sure that everything makes it into the notes. We're just gonna have a whole lot of attachments for today's meetings, and that's great. Shelby,
Yes.
Alicia, regarding your question about food, kosher and those specific things, I'd like to say it does. I cannot remember off the top of my head. I will look into it though and provide you an actual answer.
So following up with Shelby, we do hope for the holidays. All of us are just going to have plays on the word holiday, where donors adopt a family essentially that we serve and then buy them presents for the holiday season. And oftentimes our survivors are very transient and not able to provide that for their children. This year we had 25% more families participate than in previous years. So we're at about 100 families, over 200 individuals, and we only have 25 donors so far. So if anybody wants to spread the word, please feel free. And I will send a flyer also.
Please do.
And then lastly, around the food insecurity. So we have pantries at all of our drop-in locations. They're specific for the victimizations that we serve, so they can't be open to the public, but they are available if you have clients that need them in Towson, downtown, Columbia, or Dundalk. We also we have started doing hot meals at our drop-in location once a week. So on Wednesdays, it's downtown, and next week we're starting in Thursday at Dundalk. So if you have folks that would benefit from coming and having a hot meal, please feel free to send them our way.
Thank you. Anybody else? All right. So thank you all so much. This has been great. I hope that it was also beneficial for you and productive for you. Thank you, Police Department, for being here in person and providing this information. We will attach the notes. The goal is to have a meeting in February of next year. I know people will be traveling for the holidays, but we're going to try to get back into a regular scheduled meeting. I will send out a follow-up email to everyone. Thank you for the topics that you said that you would like to bring to this forum. I'm also gonna ask you what information or presentations you would be willing to provide in this forum. I know for a fact that this will not be the last time that we see the police department. I also want to make sure that it is a healthy balance between police providing information and providers having information in this forum. So I'm looking forward to the responses back, and I'm looking forward to seeing you all in the new year.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Happy holidays.
Happy holiday.
The weather would like.
Oh, wait, for those of you who are in the room,
The major.
unfortunately, this will be the last time you see this beautiful.
No, where are you going?
Leaving me.
I'm graduating law school in about a month. And I am moving to Houston.
Well, I mean, it's an opportunity for you, but we're gonna miss you.
I know.